Okay. So,
Hello, I'm Selam. I'm studying computer engineering in Politro. Hi, I'm Fatima. I'm studying computer engineering also in. So, what is ISAC? ISAC is an association that is global, independent, non-partisan, non-profit, and youth-run. What is our purpose? We are striving for a better future, and our values are youth development, people's potential, and practical experiences. We have four types of programs, which are Global Talent, Global Teacher, Global Volunteer, and ISAC member. We are in ISAC member. So we are in over 120 countries and territories. We have over 5,000 partner organizations and over 30,000 experiences every year. So one of our programs, Global Talent. Now today we're going to present you Global Talent. First of all, why? Global Talent is useful for your international network. It will boost your career, and you're gonna have academician, and you're gonna have our support. Now, imagine you're working in HR, and you have 10 candidates, which are in same age, same course, same score, and same knowledge. And there's one candidate with an international experience. If you go to HR, who would you hire? I think the answer is obvious. Now, my colleague is going to present you some opportunities. So, guys, as you know, or maybe you don't know, Isaac has many offers in different countries in different fields. But for now, we have three countries, and we have two kinds of opportunities. Short-term opportunities and mid-long-term opportunities. The short-term opportunities are something between 8 to 12 weeks. The cost is 420 euros plus 5 euros for membership. For the short-term opportunities, accommodation is provided and paid, so you don't need to be worried about your accommodation. And also about the mid-long-term opportunities, it is something between 13 to 78 weeks. The cost is 460 euros to plus 5 euros for membership. And also you will get salary. Now we start with our opportunities. After this slide, we will scan barcode, so you can sign up in the site, and also you can see the opportunities and you can check the details about it. But for now, we have three opportunities in Romania, Portugal, and Netherlands. For all of them, of course, you need knowledge about computer. Of course, you need to know some programming language like Python, HTML5, and JavaScript. But it's the programming language is different, case by case, and you can check it when you scan the barcode. So we have opportunity in Romania, which is unpaid. It's a kind of short-term opportunity. It starts from 5th of June, and accommodation is provided and paid. And the second one is in Portugal. It's again unpaid, but accommodation is provided. And if you don't have computer or your computer is old, you don't need to be worried because the computer is also provided. And also 1 meal per day also paid, but not provided. And the last opportunity is in Netherlands. You will get paid for this opportunity, and accommodation is not paid and provided, but you will have computer. And that's it. That's our opportunities. And now you can scan this QR code. You can sign up in our site and see our opportunities. You can also take a picture of it and scan it later. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor.
So,
Yes.
do you have any questions for them?
We will be sending you the booklet. If you could like publish it on the portal, they can maybe see the
This, well, let's discuss it because this is not teaching material. So,
okay. Okay.
and they can. Yes, this is. So you will have access to the recording. I don't know whether I could put the slides on the teaching material. ISEC is an official students association of Politecnico di Torino. They contact me asking me for a short slot to present the association and some opportunities, and I agreed. But there is no directly link between me or Professor Mantelero or Vaciago and the association. Okay, so if there are no questions, thanks again, and we will now resume a lecture. You can send me and then I will check whether it is appropriate or not to upload.
Okay, it's basically the same slide, but with contacts.
Just send me and then I will check about appropriateness.
Thank you so much. Have a good day again.
Okay. Okay, hope you can hear me. Yes? Very good. Just a few seconds to finish the setup. Okay, so we will resume from last point that we touched a couple of weeks ago. As usual, I remind you that I use the virtual classroom to record the lecture, but I'm not going to interact remotely. Okay. Last time we had a very long introduction to the course and to the premises of why there is a course on data ethics. At least part of the course is devoted to data ethics. We reflected on the importance of data for science, for commerce, of course, for the economy, for policy making, and for decision making, which is our focus. And we started to give some definitions of ethics. First of all, what are the common problems? What is the definition of artificial intelligence that we take into account, and the definition of data-driven automated decision-making systems. Today we will make a step forward, and we start seeing together some practical issues that belong, that stay under the wide umbrella of data issues. First of all, let me recall last thing that we identified the data-driven ADM systems, or also called predictive optimizations. We also use this term that I introduced to you. They are all based, these systems are based on patterns recognized from available data. And the particularity is that the actions, the predictions, the classifications are all actions, are all decisions that can be automatic or semi-automatic, but they have an effect on people. Being the epistemic approach of this kind of systems that are inductive systems, they also inherit some, of course, some opportunities from inductive systems. Basically, you can have a portion of data you can infer on phenomena that are larger, on data that is also beyond the subset of data that you use for the training. That is the most important advantage of using this approach. However, there are also some advantages. The most notable are summarized in this slide, and we will comment them shortly together. The first one is what is called the survival bias of low-hanging fruit. That is, you measure only what you can measure. Reality is much, much bigger than what is measurable. And so this is a known limitation of such systems. They are based on variables and on data that are a small portion of reality. The second is highly connected to the first limitation, that we cannot measure at all some aspects of our lives and of our society. While the first aspect says that you cannot, that reality is so big that you cannot measure all of it, the second aspect says that there are some aspects of reality that are not measurable at all. Even if you could have all the technical means, you cannot measure, for instance, happiness. You cannot measure an opportunity for a person that is located in the future. You can make a prediction, you can use some proxy, but I cannot measure, for instance, what is the probability that you will become an engineer of success. I can make the prediction, but I cannot measure it. And this is a second important aspect that we see, even if it's quite simple, let's say, actually is present in many, many systems deployed in reality. Third aspect is that even if we have a very precise measurement system, a technological system that can measure several aspects of reality, if reality has some structural inequalities, your measurement will reflect these structural inequalities. So if as you know, computer science is a discipline that is highly polarized with respect to gender, I can measure, I can have data about all the individuals in the world that are studying computer science. That's fine, but the data will reflect the gender imbalance. So I will have data that is mostly related to men. And for the structural inequality between the global north and the global south of the world, most of the data will probably come, or will be more accurate, probably, from where? From the global north, that are economies, societies more advanced from the point of view of technology deployment. Final point, final limitations, is the following one. There is mathematical proof that the bigger the data set and the higher is the probability to get correlations just by chance. These are the so-called confounding factors and spurious correlations. Spurious correlations are correlations that are just random, that exist in your data. Confounding factors are factors that you are not taking into account, but they do have an impact on your data. We will see in a few seconds the first one. We'll see several cases. Most of the cases, real cases that we will study, have to deal with these macro limitations. So these are limitations of any inductive inference. First example, we start with two examples that are located now 7 years back in the past. And this is a specific choice because 2016 was the year in which many scandals or issues were uncovered by press, and is somehow the date of birth, the year of birth of the specific data ethics discipline, data and algorithm ethics disciplines. The first case, today we will speak a bit more about two cases. They are all from the United States. And I already told you why we are taking so much into account the United States, because it's the most developed nation with respect to the deployment of ADM systems. The first case is from a well-known e-commerce company that is Amazon, and the case was discovered for the first time by Bloomberg. You can check if you're interested, you can deepen then the details about this case through this URL. The company at the time had already vast amount of information, historical data about purchases of their customers. So who bought what, when, where, etc. And decided to launch a very innovative service. Okay, I apologize, but the microphone is not working, and again, at least today the screen is working. Okay, let's continue like this, and then I will send another warning, another email. What I was saying, that the company was launching an innovative service that today is used probably by most of you, that is the same-day delivery. Is the beginning, is somehow the beginning of the prime Amazon opportunities that you have, that today they go much beyond fast delivering the same day. The company decided to leverage the large amount of historical data that owned about purchases in its platform with socioeconomic data from the census that in the US is publicly available, and other economical data. Not all of this data was possible at the time this article was written to know. Only the high level categories of the data that was integrated with the historical data of Amazon. The goal was to make a predictive optimization. That means make predictions on when or where the probability of people of buying things and requiring goods was very high, so that it was commercially profitable to offer the same day delivery. That has a cost, because you need to have a lot of transportation means in order to offer this possibility. And what was the result? The result was had some unpredictable impact that we will now comment. Let's focus on the first city, which is Atlanta. And for each city, you see two maps. One that is filled with green dots, and the other one is filled with blue dots. The one that is filled with green dots represent unit of population. If I will remember, there are 500 people each dot that are the so-called white residents. So they belong to the category white Caucasian. That is an official category used in the US Census. The blue dot instead is referred to unit of population of the same size about black residents. That means people that in the US Census is labeled as Afro-American people. The gray area is where the same-day delivery is offered. The white area or non-filled area is where the service is not offered. Based on the statistical optimization that were available at that time, as you can see, in Atlanta, most of the people that were taking advantage of the same-day delivery were white people. Because you can see in the gray area, just focusing for a moment on the gray area, if you check the density of the green dots, is much higher. Not only the density, but also the number of green dots is much higher than in the black residence maps, where blue dots are less. Also, if you take into account the totality of the green dots, roughly more than 95% are all located in the gray area. That is the area where the service is offered. If you take into account only the blue dots, approximately 70% of the blue dots are out of the area where the service was offered. This was an implication, an unplanned implication and impact of the statistical optimization algorithm that decided that this was the most profitable area to offer the service, and in this area, most of the white residents were living. We can debate whether a company like Amazon should worry about these aspects, and I hope we will have a short debate later. In any case, this is a fact. This is an impact of a disparate impact of the algorithm. The decision on where to offer the service or not was impacting differently people according to a certain attribute, which is a special attribute, the skin of the color. It's called a protected attribute, because you have to guarantee some equity towards ethnic origin and other attributes that we will see during the course for a certain type of services. This service is not among those services that should take care of protected attributes. So let's just make this clear. In any case, the impact was notable and was covered by this journalistic investigation. We can check quickly all the other 5 cities. In Boston, in the small area, which is quite a rich city, so in most of the city, the service is offered, unless this small central area where mostly blue dots are present. So again, the white residents, they had all access to the service, to the fast delivery service. In Chicago, the situation is quite, I would say that the map is quite evident that in the white area, very few green dots are available, while are represented, while in the corresponding black residence map, quite a remarkable number of people with dark skin could not use this service. Same for Dallas, same for New York City, although less clear than other cities. Same for Washington, D.C. But this is an area where most of the black people lives. The algorithm was simply optimizing by the profitability. So the area where residing most of the people who could spend money on the platform. We need to say that after the publication of the study, the company offered the service in all of the areas, at least for the cities that were mentioned in the study. And later on, knowledge evolved, and also economical availability of Amazon exploded. And so the service now is quite basic. But well, before saying that, let me say something more. We need to consider, first of all, that this is a particularity of the United States, where cities are sometimes even sharply divided in blocks where certain ethnic groups live and others do not live at all, because, for instance, they are too much expensive. Blocks that are particularly poor and where black population is concentrated. You know that in that country there is quite a big problem with access to services and access to equal opportunities for a large part of population that is black. And this is correlated to economic conditions. So these sharp inequalities in the way that society is organized, at least urban society is organized in the US, was reflected perfectly by the optimization algorithm. Having said that, we need to check the facts. The facts are the following ones. The classifications of the systems had a disparate impact on black people. And you saw on the maps that this was quite clear. Other two facts, the source code, nor the source code, nor the design of the systems were inspectable at all. And this is a fact. I'm not judging this fact, but this is a fact. And this is a fact that was true in 2016, and it is still true for very recent issues that we have, for instance, with different technologies like large language models that fuel chatbots and that have particular impacts on our information system, our information sphere, on the reputation of certain people, because even chatbots work with the same mechanism, inductive inferences. And the same question is valid today for ChatGPT-4. We cannot inspect the model. Whether we should or not, this is still an open question. And the data used by the software was not publicly available. 7 years later, the training data for ChatGPT-4, for GPT-4 is not known as well. So these are questions that are related to the specific case, but are still valid. The recent development of the AI Act in European Union is moving towards these aspects. There is a new center created just 1 month ago, Center for Algorithmic Transparency in Marseille, if I'm not wrong, that will be charged of moving steps forward towards the large platforms that, according to the AI Act, have further and more strict obligations than other companies. companies like platforms like Facebook, like Google, they need to show some details about the way they implement their classifications, about the labels that they give to users, and so on. So these aspects that were erased in 2016 are very, very debated right now, and they are object of legislation, of European legislation. Of course, I say, of course that the source code was not available. This is a company that needs to preserve the capital, economic capital of the shareholders. So there is an industrial secret. However, this is also a company that offers a service that is quite important in societies at the time and now. Think at the pandemic how much we used Amazon. For the way US cities are structured, this kind of services could have also a quite remarkable social value, because you cannot find, for instance, fresh foods, fresh vegetable, organic food, let's say, in every corner of the city. So having such a service could be useful for certain people. Could be very important, more than useful, for people who are sick, who cannot afford buying a car, and for the type of society and for the way that US cities are structured. If you don't own a car, you don't have access to a lot of services. So having the possibility to get home medicaments, for instance, drugs, foods, for people who do not have a car, is something that has a social value. So there are some motivations for at least making the following questions. Should, given the circumstances and given the impact, the disparate impact that we have seen, even if Amazon is a private company and invested a lot on the technology, but that technology, should the source code or the design of the system be public? There are several levels, and here I opted for 4 choices. Both of them, only the source code, only the design of the system, or none of them. There are 4 possible levels. The survey is not available yet. About data, the same question, given the circumstances and given the disparate impact. Even if the company is a private company, should data be public? Yes, with metadata. Only a subset with the metadata in order to understand it. Only the metadata, or no, should not. We should preserve the capital, the economic capital that was put into the company by shareholders, and the work of thousands of employees that work not in the algorithm, because much less works, but that work in Amazon. The same questions can be offered in 2 versions. So the first version, to everybody. This is a meaning of what public means. Public means to everybody. So I ask you whether source code should be open to everybody, or data should be open to everybody. Or imagine that we might have trusted third parties, so institutions, research centers, NGOs, whatever you like, but an entity that is independent, is trusted, and only that entity should have access to the algorithms or to the data, to different levels. So I would like to ask you, this is not an open question, this is just, you have only these options. And I would like to ask you to express your opinion about these aspects, and hopefully to then to reason together on the motivation behind your answer. So I ask you a couple of minutes to answer, for whoever wants to participate, to this short survey that should inform a short debate. You have the slides, so the link in the slides, or you can also use the QR code. So let's wait 2-3 minutes. Yes, please.
Concerning third parties, we say that, let's say that the company has some rules or laws to actually preserve the rights in order to provide the code. For instance, let's say there is a third party, I need to like give her some access to some data or something, but at the same time preserve my rights so that the idea is not stolen, the implementation is not stolen or something. But at the same time, we need to take into consideration concerning third parties. Are they biased or followed by any particular side, which might affect at the same time? So, like to answer such questions.
Yes, there is of course, this is a simplification. Our assumption, as I said, is that the trusted third party is an entity that is trusted, that is independent, has no, at least no declared bias or political vision on the issue, and that if a trusted third party means also that if you share something with the party, it has the entity has the obligation to not share further the artifacts.
Where was this third party? Probably government.
The center that I just mentioned earlier is a new center of the European Union, Center for Algorithmic Transparency, and it will have exactly this goal. So this is an example of trusted third party in reality that was just built a month ago.
I mean, like, to dig down deeper in this third party, regardless of how diversified this third party is, at some point there is like a majority in majority in selections from others. You know what I mean? I mean, like taking the first consideration, the black and the white people, as in diversity. So let's say this third party actually takes into consideration about these two races. Let's say. So at some point we could say that there are, regardless of the diversity, there is a majority in which they could actually make that assumption or make the decision, which means that the third party is also biased. At some point, like, I mean, like you can't
Any institution is made by humans,
exactly.
but
You can say at any point in this slide that there is a third party which is biased.
Yes, the fact is that a trusted third party they should work according to accountable principles that do not apply to usually to private companies that are not accountable because of several reasons, because let's say industry secrets, because they own intellectual property and so on. But when we have, the point is that I'm happy that we can already start this discussion. The point is that whenever some AI tools that makes decision instead of us, and this case was quite simple. We see another case in which is a bit more complicated. If you use black boxes, they are not accountable anymore. If you replace a judge with an algorithm, and the algorithm is closed, you cannot recover the chain of responsibility. This is an open question. I'm not explaining. I will never express my opinion. I will always try to let you appreciate the complexity of the issues at hand. Did I answer somehow? Let's share now to see whether you have more insights. Let's share now your opinion on these questions. Okay. At the question whether the source code or design the system be inspectable by trusted third parties, that is really surprising to me. A large majority of you answered yes. 20% only design, and only 3 people answered none of them. This is quite surprising because in past years, when I made the same questions, they were actually the reverse. Before going to data, let's see also the same question, but with large possible publicity too, so public to all. From 72%, we are now to 5%. Only 2 people kept probably the idea that the source code or design the system should be available. So preserving the intellectual property rights, for instance, of the company. The second level, only the source code was selected only by 2. And then only design. So you still allow a certain level of transparency. And finally, 30%, none of them. Is there anybody who would like to share the motivation of their vote? But vote, it's not a vote, of their answer. So, is sharing source code a form of transparency? I assume no from your answer. And why? Yes, please. Can you raise your voice, please?
The source code would be like the work of the programmer and the neighbors, like
So you are saying, if I understood, you say that the design is much more useful because then you can reproduce the software. Yes, source code is also not democratic because, well, at least it's less democratic than design because only technicians can understand source code. And in cases it is quite complex, only very few technicians can understand the source code written, thousands of lines of code written by a company. By the way, 1 month ago, Twitter made publicly available to all most of the source code of its recommendation system. Any other comments on this?
compare it to the same fact of blockchain, what's going on right now. Every single blockchain company or parachain company should like make its source code more public access, which is like at the same point as it was mentioned that it's like the developer worked on this, so we should like keep his value for
Yeah.
the code, and at the same time, you can access a lot of data from just like simple code or design, which I mean, in my opinion, it's like that. So I'll go for it.
Thanks. There is no right answer, and I don't have a strong opinion on all of this. But this is very hot at the moment in the debate about ChatGPT. They are the same questions. Looking at data, asking whether anonymized data used by the software should be inspectable by trusted third party, yes, 55% with metadata. The symmetric question on the source code was higher. The answer was higher. 72% answered source code and design. And here, data and the metadata a bit less. So it's like you value more data than the algorithms. Just guessing from the percentage that you can see. And 30% only subset with metadata. So we have, at least according to this survey, you have a quite large favorable opinion on sharing the data, because if we sum up the blue and the red is the 85%. And for the algorithm it was 72%. And then we have a minority that thinks no, should be preserved. Of course, the percentages decrease when we enlarge availability to all, and anonymized data used should be published and be available to all. No, yes, only 2% answered yes with metadata, and 35% only a subset with the metadata. So the 85% of the first question decreased to 40%, so half of the people. You see a value. I assume that someone of you sees a value on trusted third parties. Then we should debate what is a trusted third party, as you say, how to be sure that is accountable, is fair, has not the same bias as the company or the system that is investigating. With ChatGPT, the problem is a bit more complex, because it uses a vast amount of data that is already publicly available. So here the question is somehow reversed, because the question is, should the company OpenAI make again public the data? So because it used a large amount of data from the internet, well, at least looking at the technical report on GPT-4 and looking at the technical report on GPT 3.5, it is much more detailed. And at least there were some indications of the training data. And from those indications, investigation on similar large language model like C4 for Google, it seems that there is quite an impressive amount of data that was used to train the system. It was already public. So here we have, the question is a bit more complex, because we have data that is already public, that it was a result of someone else's work, and somehow the benefit is privatized. There is let's say a common good, let's call it, even if it is not a proper definition, but it is a resource that is available to everybody. The web is until a certain extent available to everybody. A company has the money to build a system to grasp all this content and to make a model, privatizing the benefits. So the question is, should the training data be at least public, since it is already made by a lot of public data? Yes, not? It's a difficult question. But this kind of systems like ChatGPT that are substituting now people also on cognitive tasks, probably looking how the debate is going right now, needs special regulation, because the impact is so big on society, and because the resources that are used are also public resources that probably needs a proper regulation. However, there is no right question, no right answer, sorry. But it's important to make questions now, because now that the system is under development and used, maybe in a few years it will be too late. It is also a huge because the means to treat this huge amount of data are possible only by a few actors. Microsoft invested 10 billions on the OpenAI Foundation. $10 billion, it's a lot. Who has this power? Governments only. But governments are not investing such a huge amount of data, of money, sorry. So we have a concentration of power to a few actors that are not accountable by definition. They do not have to apply to the same obligations that might have, for instance, let's say a public research center that makes the same technology. And given the impact of this technology, should we make this company more accountable? And one way to make the company more accountable is to require transparency on the training data, on the model parameters, and so on. Open question. Second case, Compass. Do you already seen this case in other courses? Sorry? Montelero. Not anybody else beyond Montenero this course, of course. But this surprised me, because this is very important case that inspired then hundreds of scientific studies in the machine learning communities. Compass is an acronym, Operational Offender Management Profiling for Alternative Sanctions. What does it mean? It means that it's a software that recommends judges about whether to give an alternative sanction to a person who is charged for a crime. So instead of staying to prison, I can have a limited freedom, or I can pay. Here we are in the justice system and terms are very technical, so I will use general terms. There are more precise terms, but they do not belong to my domain of knowledge. So for paying to be free as a specific technical term in the justice realm. However, the idea is the following one: to support judges and make somehow judgments more fair. So recommending them what? A risk indicator for each person. So imagine that you are a judge. You need to decide about a case. In front of you, you have a person. And you need to decide whether this person that was stopped for either a crime or a suspected crime should stay in prison or can have a certain level of alternative sanctions, certain level of freedom. The the score that the person can receive is from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest possible. It means high risk. High risk of what? High risk of reoffend in the future. So the system makes a probability-based prediction on whether a certain person will make a crime again in the near future. If yes, if the probability is high, then his risk score will be 10, 9, 8, high risk. Otherwise, we'll output lower risk scores from 1 to 4, low risk score, 5, 6, 7, medium risk. This is the idea, how the system works. It's not substituting judges, it is helping them, it is supporting them in this decision. This is an example, really simplified of output, with real data from the system, data that was taken from ProPublica, that is an NGO organization, a journalistic organization, that found the data on an unsecured Amazon Web Service and obtained the data and then integrated with other available data to reconstruct the output of the system. Werner Prater, as I was saying, when was stopped, he had in his history 2 armed robberies, plus 1 attempt of robbery. This was his criminal history. He was given a free, that is a low risk score, that is a suggestion to give him an alternative sanction, basically. Later, within 2 years, he offended again. He made a grand theft, again trying to steal. He stole something else. Brescia Borden instead had in her criminal history 4 juvenile misdemeanors, crimes that are not so relevant, like stealing a bike. That was the reason why it was lately stopped when she got this output. That was 8, high risk. And she was never, then she didn't reoffend again. At least she wasn't caught. This is Brescia Borden and this is Vernon Prater. Another similar case is the one of Dylan Fadgett and Bernard Parker. Dylan Fadgett had in his history 1 attempted burglary. He was given a low risk, a free, and later, in the following 2 years, he was stopped again for drug possession. I don't know what type of drug, so how much was severe, but because this is changed from country to country in the United States, but this enters the criminal record. Bernard Parker had 1 non-violent resistance to arrest in his criminal history. He got a 10, he never reoffended again, and this is the picture. I think that now you have clear what was the problem. The problem in numbers was that, at least in the dataset that was available to ProPublica, the 24% of white people were labeled higher risk, but did not reoffend. These are the false positive. So I receive a high risk, but then I will not make a crime in the next 2 years. This is not a measure of how much you are dangerous. This is just the prediction whether you will enter again the criminal record. What about black, African American? The double, false positive. 45% were labeled as high risk and then did not reoffend. This was the measure of the disparate impact. Other way around, you are labeled as low risk, but then you reoffend, so you can be considered a false negative in terms of prediction. And this error is somehow an advantage, because you are labeled as low risk, you get a certain level of freedom if you follow the recommendation by the system. And this was the reverse, 48 white and 28 African American. The system was developed by North Point, then changed name, Equivant, and it was offered to public authorities and is still used by some public authorities in US. So here the context changes a little bit. We have a private company still that develops a software that is then used by a public administration for a specific case, that is supporting the decision about whether a person should stay in prison or not. We can make the same consideration as before. We can observe, this is a fact, a disparate impact. By the way, the company who developed the software never challenged, never said that the data was wrong, confirmed that the data was the real data, and never challenged these percentages. However, they said that the software was calibrated, was well calibrated according to several ethnic groups. And both were right, both the company and ProPublica. But again, it was not inspectable, neither the source code or the design of the system or the data. So before the break, I ask you whether you would like to give your answer. Let me open the survey. Okay, sorry. Okay. So I ask you again a couple of minutes to answer to this question, and then a few more minutes to shortly comment, and then we make the break. Okay, shortly. We have that 77% of you says that both design source code should be available to trusted third parties, and is quite similar to the Amazon case. And only design, we have the remaining part. Here disappeared or at least I did not answer the category none of them. So it seems that being the service implied in some kind of public functioning makes an effect on your consideration. The largest possible publicity, of course, has lower percentages, 20%, and only one source code, and design 60%. So 20% compared to previously 5%. So I assume that the fact that the software is used again in the justice in the public justice system makes a difference. About data, anonymized data should be inspectable by trusted third party. 63% and 27% that makes the 90% of you, very high percentages. And with respect to Amazon was well, the blue part is higher in the ProPublica case, but summing the two of them, we have very similar percentages. And then, of course, I can observe that we have less blue answers with the largest possible publicity. Do you have further comments on your answer, or you want to underline some specific aspect? Yes, please.
I would like to know how much this kind of tool is kept into consideration during the actual
yeah. We will have a lecture that will be devoted specifically to Compass, and we will answer to this question. However, I can also already anticipate that a few judges were interviewed by ProPublica, and not all of them answered. However, the one who answered confirmed that they had a certain level of this tool had a certain level of influence on their final decision. This kind of bias, let's call it, is called computer bias, but also machine bias. That's why if you click on on this URL, you will see that the title of the article is machine bias. So that the fact that a suggestion comes from a machine, you give it much more importance. Thanks for the question. I would like to resume the lecture at 5:40. So now we stop here for a while. Yes. Okay, thanks a lot for participating to the survey, your comments also during the break. Of course, these small, short surveys, the goal is to try to interact a bit more than a traditional lecture. I would like to, so we'll have, as I said, I received a couple of questions on Compass during the break. We will have a specific lecture on Compass where we will see why what kind of data fuels the system and why this disparate impact occurs. Before continuing with the next slides, I just would like to share with you just to let you appreciate that we are speaking in this course about things that are happening now, about questions that right now society is trying to address. So this is the website of the new center that has been just set up. The official communication was in April. The European Center for Algorithmic Transparency. A few lines. Well, the ECAT will contribute to a safer, more predictable and trusted online environment for people and business. How algorithm system shapes the visibility and promotion of content and its societal and ethical impact in an area of growing concern. Measures adopted under the Digital Service Act. Call for algorithmic accountability and transparency audits that are soon mandatory. For whom? It depends. It is a risk approach. This is the domain of Mantelero and Baciago, and I'm sure they shared with you details. The reasoning behind the rationale behind the European regulation is the highest is the risk and the more obligations that you have. The highest possible risk, you cannot deploy at all your system. But these are very few exceptions, and this is why the regulation probably is not strong enough. But for very large online platforms and very large online search engines, you have some specific obligations. And this new center, the goal of this new center is to enforce the obligations. There is a list of VLOPs and VLOs SE companies, but not only companies, also foundations like Wikipedia enter this list with specific obligations. And so now they are recruiting experts, scientists, to make operations possible, to make audits possible. Scientists and experts working at the ECAT will cooperate with industry, representatives, academia, and civil society organizations to improve our understanding of how algorithms work. They will analyze transparencies, assess risk, including discrimination risks, like the one that I showed you before, and propose new transparent approaches and best practices. At the moment, the center is hosted by the Joint Research Center, that is a specific research center of the European Union. We have one in Italy as well, at ISPRA. And yes, they are recruiting right now. Let me check if they have some more information here. So they will address companies working on social networks, online marketplace, search engines, where there is a urgent need for public oversight of the processes at the core of their business. So this is law, and it is right now the institutions to make this law effective are being built in this literally in these days. And the ECAT important, even if it is hosted by the European Research Center, is directly connected with the Directorate General Communication Networks, Content and Technology, the DG Connect. That is like the Ministry of, let's say, Digital Innovation and Telecommunication of Europe. It's not a ministry, but it's that part of the institution that is exclusively devoted to the digital world. Algorithmic transparency, recommender systems, information retrieval, search engines, fairness, accountability and transparency. a whole part of our course is devoted to algorithmic fairness. Then ethical, economic, legal, and social impact, risk assessment and risk mitigation measures, and fundamental rights. This is from the public offer, let's say. So there are institutions that need to make law applicable, but now we have a market growing. In USA is a bit more advanced. In Europe is coming. For instance, a new company has been formed in the last couple of months. This is an article from the 9th of March. Immanence, that will make its business on audits, because law is going to be applied very, very soon. And this is the website of Immanence. We assess digital technologies to make them ethical and responsible. And as I said, it's a few years that this kind of market has been formed and is growing in the United States. Here in Torino, we have something that, at least from its beginning, is similar. That is Clearbox AI, and now turned its business into synthetic data in order to avoid to use only real data about people. And we will have a seminar also given by Clearbox AI here during the course. And I will tell you in the next weeks when the seminar will be. And we also have a couple of thesis proposals in this startup. But more information is coming. I showed you these web pages just to make it concrete what we are discussing. Because new institutions and new companies are growing right now just on the issues that we are studying. Going back to our presentation, we proceed. Let me check if I'm still recording. Yes. Okay. There are a multitude of other possible questions that we could make. We will not go in details now, but just to let you understand that automation should not be software automation in a specific context where you are trying to, especially when you are trying to predict social outcomes, brings a lot of complexity and a lot of additional questions. For instance, should we make only classifications and provide to judges just the risk score, or should we add additional information? Why the risk score was 10 and not 1, for example? How the training dataset was made, etc. So should we provide contextual information in addition to prediction or classification? Should we build a software with a totally different goal? Instead of making as output a risk score, should we give a totally different output? For instance, social vulnerability of the person who is charged for a crime. This can also be turned into a classification with some limitation, but let's say, is very different when you have a software that tells a judge, hey, this guy, according to my data analysis, is vulnerable according to his history, is unemployed, for instance, since many years, etc., etc. Instead of saying this guy is a risk for society. Then the judge can use this information from the software very, very different. Which stakeholders should be included when you develop such a system that has such a social impact? Just the company that builds the software, or should we involve better civil society, associations working with people in prisons, for instance, other types of associations, the category of the judges, etc. So participation, civic participation to the deployment of predictive optimization software that has an important social impact. And then who should be responsible for software misclassification? When I label as a high risk a person, and the judge follows that classification and is wrong, who is responsible? Who should pay for such an error? Can the person challenge the software classification? So these are all open questions, new questions that are rising from a surprising big wave of software automation in the realm of human decisions. Now, let's have a few other examples without going too much in details, in which I will just show you examples of disparate impacts, not explanations. We will have a next lecture that devoted to explanation. So this was an image that was become quite viral on Twitter a few years ago, about a soap dispenser that could not recognize the hand of black people. Probably because it was designed in a certain way to recognize only light skin. This is a disparate impact. Another example of disparate impact. This is an example of images, searching of images that are given by Google when you make a search with the word CEO. Only male, white. Here, the impact is less evident, and there is not, let's say, a direct impact on, there is no decision attached to this software output. However, there is a certain representation of reality that is quite polarized. No women here. Well, one here, but very few. For, of course, I cannot know what the output will be in your, if you make a search now, because you see, it's an algorithm that is continuously evolving and is based partially on the data that is taken by us, from us. Another Google image search with the word carpenter. Nurse, so carpenter only male, nurse only female. In English, this term is neutral, is not connotated by gender. Here, this is a tool, software classification, image classification by Google, that tells you what is in the picture. So here there is a hand and a gun, but if we change the color of the hand and we make it clear, here there is a hand and a monocular, not a gun anymore. Another example of disparate impact. Here, automated moderation. It's very difficult to moderate so-called hate speech in the social network. For this reason, usually is made by humans, by persons that are usually in the global south and usually paid not so well for working very long hours with content that is much more violent than the one that I'm showing you. This is a tool always by Google, Perspective API, that gives you a toxicity score from 0 to 100%, saying whether, signaling whether a sentence as hate speech can be labeled as hate speech. and so subject to removal from a social network, for example. If you have a sentence like this, I would disagree, as a black man, my experience is different, the level of the toxicity score is 46%. If you change one word, instead of black man, you write French man, the toxicity goes down to 5%. And then you have all intermediate levels. So black women is 38% of toxicity, homosexual men is 14%, desired women 12%, and so on. So just changing very few terms, just one in some cases, the level of toxicity changes quite a lot. And again, we have a very different impact on whether there is the word of black or not. This is a very recent paper on DAL-E, output by DAL-E. If you ask an image of an emotional person, you will get basically images from women. If you ask an image of a poor person, you have a quite clear indication of the ethnic groups. A thug, they are all black. A terrorist, they are well connotated. This is output from DAL-E. Well, this is a scientific paper. This can be also a game, try to test this software. But imagine an AI pipeline where you use automatically components that gives this kind of output, and then they are connected automatically to other software. The chain of disparate impacts will grow and grow. This is an American man in this car, and this is an African man in this car. The stereotypes are quite strong in DAL-E. An American man in this house, and an African man in this house. An Ethiopian man that is represented with specific characteristics as a poor man in a poor country. And I'm sure not all, well, this is not a good image for Ethiopian men. If you write a software developer, they are all male and white, while a flight attendant is a female. A chef is a male. A cook is a female. A taxi driver is a black man, usually, from DAL-E. A housekeeper is a female, also with some specific ethnic groups. If you remember that one of the limitations of inductive inferences was that they replicate usually structural inequalities or structural differences in society. And this is a quite clear toy example of this. Amazon in 2018 had to stop the development of a tool to automatize the screening of applications to hire people, because the software was basically suggesting only white men people. The reason, as you can imagine, is in the training set, in the training data. But there were no ways to remove this kind of disparate impact. This is an impact that is serious, because if you have a tool that discriminates in a very strong way female, and you deny job opportunities based on gender, even if it was not your intention, but if this is the impact of your software, you have problems. You may incur in law problems, legal issues. So Amazon, since technically was not able to to improve the system, decide to stop it. We have still unresolved big issues in face classification and face recognition. They do not work well with black faces, especially black women. I supervised a thesis last year trying out two classification, commercial classification, face classification systems on faces of people with disabilities. All wrong. So again, we have disparate impact here. The software that works well if you have certain personal characteristics that you cannot change. You cannot change the skin of your color. And in certain cases, you cannot make differences with respect to personal characteristics. This is a suggestion for your own curiosity culture, a video of about an hour, 50 minutes. You and AI, just an engineer, the politics of AI, where you have more and more examples, is given by Kate Crawford. Kate Crawford is working both at Microsoft, and she's a professor in, if I well remember, both at New York University and University of Paris. She wrote a brilliant book that is called The Atlas of AI, in which she show what is behind the supply chain of AI systems. So from the hidden work, labor from humans to extractions of massive extractions of rare natural resources, environmental cost, and so on and so on. It's a very good book, and now Kate Crawford is well known in all over the world. She will speak in September in Politecnico at a database conference that is organized by Professor Baralis, and she will be ACDML, I think is the name of the conference. It's a conference on machine learning. She will be among the keynote speakers. A few years ago, the problem was only known to very specific research centers or very specific journalists. Then evidence began to grow and grow, and the media also covered a lot data ethics issues. And then politics also arrived and understood that this is a problem. This is an excerpt from a public speak of Margaret Vestager, who is in charge of competition law and digital in Europe, and is also the vice president of the European Commission. That says us very clearly what is the problem. Trained on biased data, these kind of systems, automated decision-making systems, they can learn to repeat those same biases. And sadly, our societies have such a history of prejudice that you need to work very hard to get that bias out. I don't know whether it is possible or not to remove this bias, because if you change the training data, you lose accuracy. So it's a problem. It's an open problem for businesses and research as well. But the problem is now known at the highest possible level of the European institutions. Now, coming to an end of this set of slides, we are interested in understanding better this relationship, the relationship between society and digital technologies, a specific type of digital technologies that we defined in terms of inequality. Our question is to understand whether the predictive optimization systems that have been deployed a lot in these years are increasing or not, are improving the inequalities of our society. Unfortunately, I have to anticipate you that the question is, the answer is negative. They are not improving. They are making things worse. And we'll try to understand why. We're trying to have notions of algorithm fairness to understand how to measure the fairness of algorithms. And why? Because our discipline is quite new. It has only 70 years of history. Computer science, in modern terms, was born with the first digital computer, 1946, the ENIAC in US, was the result of intensive research during the World War. So we can say that our discipline is quite young, and we are still making difficulties in understanding that the system that we are building, they are not only technical systems, they are social technical systems. They are systems that have some specific technical characteristics, but they also have some social characteristics that have to be taken into account when designing and deploying a system. In other disciplines, this is quite, that are much older, this is quite obvious. In our discipline, instead, it is quite new, instead. Although at least in research, this is debated since a long time, since the very first years of our discipline. Imagine to build a road, an highway. When you make a project of a highway, you don't need only to specify and to take care of technical details like the type of materials that you are going to use, the level of inclination, how many lanes, etc., etc. How much traffic that highway should be able to convey. But you also need to take care of what kind of territories you are dividing. When you build an highway, you divide, well, potentially forever a territory. You cannot cross anymore easily unless you make some bridges and some other technical artifacts. You cannot cross easily the highway. You bring economic opportunities because, of course, you let goods flow much easier. But you also have to take care that situations like this do not happen. Here in this picture, there is a parent probably with his own child that is going shopping or coming back from shopping. So, for instance, in a country where it is difficult to have a car because it's very expensive, when building such a huge street or highway or even streets, urban street, you need to take care of people that cannot afford a car. So probably sidewalks should be a bit better than this to avoid having a negative, strong impact on the life of people. So this is a metaphor. But in the discipline of urban constructions, there are techniques and awareness of this kind of social issues and this kind of impacts. In our discipline, this is growing, and there is one of the goals of our course. If you go back to the very first slides, you will see that you will, we hope that you will learn to understand the impact, especially towards vulnerable people, like any other engineering discipline. So this is trying to connect with the very first introduction, what we have seen. We will take into account, into consideration, because we are in Europe, the European Charter of Fundamental Rights, Article 21, non-discrimination. Any discrimination based on any grounds such as sex, race, color, ethnic or social origin, generic features, language, religion or belief, political or any other opinion, membership of a national minority, property, birth, disability, age or sexual orientation shall be prohibited. Any time that the software systems make predictions and classifications on social outcomes, and there is a disparate impact towards any of these protected attributes, it is a problem. We'll consider it as a problem. So take this list of attributes as a reference point whenever we will speak about discrimination. Whenever you will see in an exam text, explain possible discrimination issues. They should all refer to protected attributes, not to any type of attributes in a database. So this is very important. Subarticle comma 1 of Article 21 of the European Charter of Fundamental Rights. Having shown what are the types and example of disparate impact, we now proceed and explain why it occurs, at least in a large majority of cases. So please allow me a few seconds to change slides, and then I will also upload them. Okay. This slide set is a derived work from a book that is almost finished. It is already available online, fairmlbook.org. Fairness and Machine Learning, Limitations and Opportunities, by Baroka Sard Narayanan. They are the most active professors in the field. Attention that the derived work means that I based the slides on a specific chapter, or the first chapter, but there are some things that I added and a few others that I removed. So take as a reference the slides. However, if you want to go deeper on some concepts, you know that you have a chapter of a book that is openly available and you can consult. This is the machine learning loop that is proposed by the authors of the FairML book, and it is made of a few elements. So, first of all, the individuals, us, the people, together, taken together, we make the so-called state of the world or state of society. We can. That means that we can aggregate data on individuals and elaborate some patterns on groups of individuals. So this is the reason why they divided the two elements. By means of measurement, you get data from what? From the so-called state of the world, and so from individuals. You learn from data and you build a model. The model as an output, a prediction, a classification that is bound to an action. This is very similar to the definition of artificial intelligence agent that I gave to you. So there is an action on individuals. And this closes the big loop. Then there is a shorter loop because individuals can change their behavior according to the action of the model, well, the system that implements the model, and they can provide feedback that updates the model directly. This is possible, technically possible. Not easy, but possible. This creates a further loop, inner loop. So this is a formalization. Now we will check step by step why disparity impact may happen. The first is about the state of the world. It is aggregated data on individuals. As we have already said, the society is not perfect, so there are some structural inequalities. For instance, in Italy, it is well known that the economy is much stronger in the north than in the south. And if you collect economic data on individuals, this will be most of the times reflected. Sometimes there are not inequalities, just disproportions. Like the number of women in this class is probably 10-15%, because this is common in the population of computer science courses. And we have seen that in the Amazon case, that probably the black people were living they were all concentrated in areas that were poorer. That's why those areas were not selected by the algorithm to offer the same-day delivery service. And there are others, infinite possible types of demographic disparities. Few very easy and well-known example. Let's start from Torino, our city. And you know that Torino has 8 administrative regions, sub-regions, quarters, neighborhoods, not quarters. And if you take from the open data of 2017 the average age by gender, the media average, divided by circoscrizione, that is the administrative unit, you know that it can changes. So I used on purpose the blue for female to change the common stereotype. And you can see that there is a difference of 4 years between the circoscrizione 2 and circoscrizione 6, between female. And male is 3 years difference. What are 2 and 6? 2 is Mirafiori Nord, Mirafiori Sud and Santa Rita, and 6 is the opposite. Barriera di Milano, Reggio Parco, Barca, Bertolla, etc. Just taking the 2 poles, so we have a quite relevant difference on average age. Then we can also have a look at the age distribution altogether, and we can see that females lives longer, at least according to data of 2017. But situation shouldn't have changed a lot, because you have more female in this area of the graph, that is from 55 to even 100 years. On the left side of the distribution, we have instead that males there are more younger males. So this is just a straight example of demographic disparities that basically can easily enter the loop, the feedback loop. This is the age distribution in 2 districts of Torino, circoscrizione 1 and 2. As you can see, is quite different. Is at least in the level of number of people living, and then in certain regions of the distribution. Then we turn into more interesting, at least from my point of view, data that is the income distribution. Where the richest people live in Torino? On the top of the hills, as usual. So here, this is data from the tax declaration. So official data, that has some limitation, especially in Italy, has some non-limitation. But we need in data we trust, no? So this is the official data, and we can see that there is a large difference in terms of income here all the north of the city is around 16,000, 20,000 maximum euros per year, and here we are over 50,000. So if you use this data, this disproportion, this is more than a disproportion, is a structural, let's say, difference, will enter your training data for sure. And here you also have, in the city center, you also have some quite good salary. Where is the middle class? The middle class is here, in the south part, more or less. Then you can check this data with election polls, and you get some interesting results, but this is up to you if you want to do it. In Italy, what I was saying, if you use to take the same data from Italy instead, well, the difference is average data, of course, always. It's quite big. North Italy, as you can see, is the blue, darker blue. In southern Italy is the yellow. So there is a difference between Trentino and Calabria of declared income of about 38,000 euros on average. And this is, again, another example of inequality, structural inequalities that can enter easily a system that is informed with this data, is trained with this data. We know that the reality might be a bit different. This is a declaration of tax. And in Italy, we have a huge problem with black market or black, let's say, salaries. But this is the factual data, the only data that you can use if you are interested in this type of data for our applications. And this is another interesting example. Then we enlarge a bit more our view, and we look at income inequality. Then we cannot use euros if we enlarge our view to the entire world, and we use the Gini coefficient. That is 0 if there is a complete equality in terms of income in a country, and 1 if there is a complete inequality. So a very unequal state, when there is very few people that are very rich and the majority is very poor, will have an index of Gini that is very close to 1. This is the meaning of the Gini index. Where is Italy? First of all, I don't see. Yes, here. We are not so good. 0.33. At least among the OECD countries. And it is increased in the last 2-3 years. The pandemic increased the inequalities in all over the world. And then there are countries like South Africa with a very high Gini index, Costa Rica, and look, United States, that will be the home of many of our use case, is quite high, it's 0.4. So these are countries where there is a large inequality of income. Europe, Iceland, Norway, Belgium, they are the best country in terms of equality of income. This is another example of structural inequality you cannot change, that will be reflected in your data. If you use this kind of data, maybe you are interested in the 600 million people that lives in Europe, and it's quite a good amount of data that could be used in some system. And you have to take account that countries are different, very different among themselves and inside their territory. What about US? Racial wealth inequality let's use this graph that is a statistic from Forbes that is regraphed by Statista, the most important portal about statistics. As a student, Polito student, you should have access, full access to Statista, I think. So this is the average yearly income of a white person in United States, and we are constantly above $100,000. The difference with Black and Latino is huge. It's a factor of 15, let's say, or even 25, according to official data. So I will assume from now on that some of the structural inequalities that we are looking together will be the base for your reasoning in the exam. I will always refer to such kind of inequalities that you will see today and that we will see in some other cases. Yes, please.
Even of economical power that can be educated with $6,000. I think they were more compared to $6,000 than now. So if we modify the graph, this difference, I think it's even higher.
Yes.
In terms of disparity.
Thank you. Very, very good observation. So I should update this data because now these years are forecasted. So probably I will have the new data will probably reflect also what even more what you said. Also because we are witnessing a quite historical wave of inflation that we witnessed only in the 80s and back in the 20s that brought to the Second World War. But this is cultural considerations that are important, and it's important to make these kind of considerations in university classes. And so you are always welcome to interrupt me and reasoning together with me, comment. For the sake of the exam, it's enough that you know that there is a huge disparity between white people and other ethnic groups, especially Black people and Latinos in United States, for instance. Just to be concrete and practical. At least half of UK's Black staff affected by racial pay gap, new research finds. So Black people are paid less also with the same work, with the same let's say not contracts, but same duties, work duties. The same is happening in Italy with women. Same duties, paid less. This is a graph from the World Economic Forum, the GOTA of economy, and it shows the performances during the time of ethnic groups, young adults in US universities, and in different according to different ethnic groups. As you can see, black, white, they are all somehow decreasing, but there are differences between Black, Hispanic, Black and white have this kind of difference. You see? Let's take one line per time, so it is easier. At the 12th year of school, the similar pattern is at the 8th in math. Similar pattern is at the 8th year of school in math. So this is the highest observed difference between white students and Black students in grade math. This is the meaning of these first two lines. Clear? Okay. Then, Okay, the third line is similar. We have less difference than if you compare Hispanic and white in math. And then we start, so math shows the biggest differences between black and white, and also partially between Hispanic and white. Then we have black and white in reading. There are also relevant differences at the 12th year, and also between other comparisons. So the graph says that education skills are more advanced in white people in US and less advanced in black people. There is a social economical and social technical explanation, and this is based on the fact that the school system in US is also based on economic opportunity of your family of origin. But this is not a class of inequality. It's a class of data ethics. So what is important for you to know is that there is a gap of education skills in US, and this is a fact, between white and the other ethnic groups, especially black people. This is the takeaway, another takeaway from this graph. Then this is what I was saying earlier, the gender pay gap. The average in OECD is 13%, at least according to data. I don't know, I didn't put the date of this data, I should. We'll try to update soon. In Italy, we are around 5%. US around 18%, is a lot. In Japan, even 24%. In Korea, even 34%, is a lot. So, takeaway, we have a problem in the equality in terms of payment, gender equality in terms of payments. This is a statistic from 2020 in Italy, gender pay gap, women on average 27,000 euros per year, and men 30,000 average. So to be taken carefully, this is an average. But there is a pay gap of about 3-4% according to this data that is consistent with the 5% by OECD. If you want to go a bit more in details on this data, we see that most of the difference is in the lower paid jobs, blue collars, where the difference reaches even 13%. So women, blue collars women, are paid more than 10% less than men at a parity of, let's say, category of work. The difference shrinks until a minimum in the middle management, and again increases again in the top management. I will never ask you about the numbers, but it's important that you know about this fact. And then I leave to your curiosity the trend in the past. What about health? Several research. This is one of many. This is data from the World Economic Forum. The damages of pollution are more serious for black people because they live the neighborhoods or the cities, the regions that are in which there is more pollution. They are more exposed to pollution. So there is a racial problem also for health. These maps show you the exposure, the burden, and to non-white, that is biggest in certain regions where, according to the census, there is a certain kind of population. So Latin Americans, 63% more pollution exposed to what they produce. 56 Black Americans. So this is another statistics. But the takeaway is the same. If you have less economic opportunities, you live also in territories that are more exposed in terms of environmental damages. Takeaway of this slide. And this is an interesting report from the Lancet journal. It's one of the best journals in the medical sector, showing the mortality rate in Switzerland, that it was one of the most advanced in terms of economic well-being countries in Europe. It is showing the mortality rate, also and other statistics, according to what? To the socioeconomic position. Socioeconomic positions are labeled in a scale from 1 to 10. And if you look at the last graph, at the deaths, relative deaths, ratio of deaths per 100,000 people, there is quite a relevant difference between the people in the lowest social economical positions and the richest in the highest economical positions. You see? The CEP group have highest deaths until 6, 7 roughly, than the richest. And this again is a fact. So economic opportunities can give you, obviously, better medical treatments, better knowledge on how to take care of yourself, more money to buy medicaments, roughly speaking also. There was, yes? Yes. Socioeconomical position.
Number of deaths per population, is an absolute value, or it is related to the amount of people in that particular group? Because this is not clear for me if it's...
It's
not clear for me if it's absolute deaths per group, or it's normalized between total people of the group and deaths.
No, it's not normalized. It's that you have number of deaths per relative to 100 divided by 100,000 people. Thanks for the question. Again, the important thing to know is that there might be a correlation between your socioeconomical position and the level of medical treatments that you can afford. Especially in countries where there is no public health system and you need insurance. But if you don't have work, you don't have insurance. As you know, medical insurance is a big problem in the US, again. Because people who cannot afford medical insurance cannot access certain medicaments. That's why also Obama was trying to make the Medicare for all. And I don't remember how, until which extent he was able to do so. But this is, again, is a fact, is a problem that we should take into account when we consider structural inequalities. The people who studies structural inequalities, especially sociologists, but also economists, are elaborated this graph that I will briefly comment to you. And this was proposed by a black scholar, Patricia Hill Collins, black feminist scholar, who called it the matrix of domination or matrix of oppression. But let's take it as matrix of domination. That is, what is the matrix of domination? Explains, in general, in the most advanced economies, what are the characteristics of the dominating class. What is the dominating class? Is the social class who owns most of the political and economical power. And the dominant group in the world, but on average, and especially in US, has the following characteristics. Is men, European Anglo-Americans. They are rich, they are well educated, they don't have disabilities, they speak fluently English, they are often young, and they are heterosexual. This, according to a series of statistical studies and studies from sociologists, these are the main traits of the people that is in power in societies of the world. This is a sociologist view, perspective. It is important to understand that wealth is racially connotated. Income is racially connotated in many countries, can be even gender connotated, as we have seen. So this kind of structural inequalities should be taken into account when using predictive optimization for social outcomes, because social outcomes are the results of the structure of society in which you live. There is a book on AI by Sasha Costanza-Choc that explain quite well this kind of implications for AI technologies. This is an article, Design Justice AI and Escape from the Matrix of Domination. This is the book, Design Justice, Community-Led Practices to Build the World we Need, with a view on design of software technologies. We have an explosion of books on these topics. Just signal you for your own curiosity, intellectual curiosity, Automatic Inequality by Virginia Eubanks, one of the first books that were detailing how inequality structures were replicated in ADM systems. And then another important book is Math of Weapon Distractions by Katie O'Neill. There will be a slides also on it. Okay. So it should be clear now that the world has some demographic disparities and some structural inequalities that can be transferred through measurement into data, into the training data of a data-driven system. This is actually another example of how this is then translated into data by the measurement process. And this is a graph from the New York Times, not the Washington Post, showing how much Black people are still underrepresented in the top universities, the top colleges. Regardless of the affirmative actions that were taken, the policies that were taken in the United States, regardless of that, we have that whites and Asian are still overrepresented with respect to the actual population in USA in the top colleges than Hispanics and Blacks. There is also an additional problem that is the following one, that the multiracial category, when you enrolled into university, was not used until 2008. So what you should track when you enroll, if you come from a multiracial family, and this is a limitation, a further limitation of many data that is used in US Census, but also in other institutions, because the race is tracked. The ethnic group is tracked in those systems. and it has an impact, actually, then if that data is used. Consider that it is also very controversial to use race as or ethnic group as a category. This is because race does not exist in nature. Race in the English terms. It is a social construct. For example, look at the classification used in South Africa. It was officially used in the 50s. It was implemented by IBM. It was Europeans, Asiatics, persons of mixed race or colored, natives or blue-blooded individuals, or the Bantu race. This was how people was registered into the census of South Africa. It is very also politically connotated. It is a social construct. This is also a limitation of using this type of tracking, this type of data. This was made to introduce you the fact that whenever we measure characteristics of people, individuals in aggregated form, we make politics, because any measurement process is not objective, even though usually we give objectivity. When we look numbers, we say the numbers are objectives. The measurement process and all the decisions that were made to build a variable, even a single variable, is a political process. That means is a process that embeds certain visions of the world, certain characteristics of society. And I will try to convince you on next Monday. So if you don't have questions, lecture is over. Well, trying to convince you means that I will explain you formally why it is like this. It's not an opinion. Thanks. Have a nice evening.